Ohai Marks, and hello, Fellow-litas.
Yes, happy International Lolita Day, Petra.
Oh, is she gonna bite me? No. Just grow. Just quetch. Okay, baby, sit on my lap. Or not. Just popping in here to say a quick intro before I get into part 2 of my wrestling Q&A. So I did not expect to be talking about wrestling for literally multiple hours, and frankly I only recorded one intro and outro, and I've had to break my Q&A video footage up into several parts. So today will be part 2, and also there were a lot of questions about aesthetic stuff, so I'm actually trying to film a separate lookbook video for my training gear and what I'm planning on wearing as a performer. So please stay tuned for that if that is something you are interested in and asked about. But yeah, I'm going to answer a whole other chunk of questions that were filmed the same day as my first Q&A. But June 5th is the Spring-Summer International Lolita Day, which is also the day I promised I would be announcing the winners of my mirror giveaway. Woo! Thank you again to everybody who entered. I got so much great feedback, and I've already started making a ton more mirrors. So without further ado, who won this contest? The winner of their chosen custom brooch is actually fellow YouTuber Lainey in Wonderland. Lainey is a huge YouTuber compared to me, and their cosplay work and Lolita videos are absolutely wonderful. I cannot recommend them enough. I'm kind of amazed, actually, that such a prominent YouTuber, Lolita, was interested at all in my work, so I feel like Senpai noticed me. So please check out their work if you haven't already. They just happened to win the giveaway, which, you know, as a wrestling fan, seems kind of sus. When I told my spouse that Lainey won, he was like, "Oh, is it fixed?" And I was like, no, it's not fixed. And for fear of making it seem like this was in some way fixed, I decided I was going to pick a second winner, and I contacted her, and it turns out she's also an existing Lolita YouTuber. Please check out Cecilia's work, aka Dr. Papillon. I may have mispronounced that. She's mostly into classic Lolita, if that's what you're into, and she actually gave me a lot of the feedback that I used to create my second wave of prototypes and picked one of the brooches from that set. So yes, thank you to everybody who entered. I swear this was not rigged. That random number generator just did what it did. So I hope my winners are very happy. I'm not sure how many mirrors Lace Market will allow me to post. I might end up having to put them up on Etsy, which I hate because Etsy is really uncool to their creators, actually. I'd really love to avoid putting them on Etsy, and I'm looking into alternatives. So if there is some sort of low-cost place where I can set up shop, please let me know in the comments, and I'd love to get some mirrors up. Otherwise, yeah, check out my Lace Market. I might have a few select prototypes up for you to peruse. I have no idea if the prices seem appropriate, but if you want the mirror and you don't love the price, I don't know, message me and make me an offer. I just want to get all of them into good homes because I really enjoy making them. And now I think I've rambled enough. Apologies for not having an actual Lolita video on International Lolita Day. This was really poorly planned, but yeah, you know, I'm still figuring out this whole YouTube thing, so doing my best. Take it away past me in your much better makeup and hair and wrestling costume. I get this question all the time. Is it like the TV show Glow on Netflix? God, I wish. Glow is really unique in its perspective on wrestling in that the people who are training in Glow are picked for who they are and their potential, and they've been paid to specifically learn to wrestle, and then they get paid to be put on TV to wrestle, and that is not my experience at all. Instead, I'm actually paying somebody over $100 a month, like a gym subscription, to be given the access to the trainers. I'm expected to put in the work, as they say, pay my dues by helping out around the dojo. I've cleaned toilets, I've sold tickets, I've sold merch, I've set up and taken down the ring, I've given people rides, I've swept floors, I've cleaned up vomit. None of that is particularly glamorous, and none of that is present in Glow. But that's really the difference between being hired by a wrestling company to become a wrestler. Like, I would imagine that that's not so dissimilar to how women of wrestling would pick their wrestlers. They often find athletes from other sports and then train them to wrestle, which I think is super cool. God, I want to work for women of wrestling. Anyway, WWE has been known to do that. They'll scout for people who fit certain characteristics for certain characters they already have in mind, or find college athletes or models, sometimes just very pretty people who they can mold into wrestlers, and then they pay them to go to the performance center where they've signed a contract where they're paid to learn to wrestle, and then eventually they will make it onto TV. But that's not how most people do it, not even close. What is like Glow, though, is how you take people from all different walks of life, all different communities, different backgrounds, different levels of experience, different levels of interest, and you become a community. That is exactly like Glow. You will have conflicts with people and you will make friendships that will last you for your whole lifetime. Also, there is a lot of glitter and spandex involved, which, I mean, obviously would appeal to me, and I would imagine some of you as well. But no, it's definitely not as glamorous, gorgeous, or high production, at least not at the level that I'm wrestling at. Someone asked, how does pro wrestling work? I think it's interesting that the word work is used because a work is how most people in the business describe pro wrestling. It's not a traditional sport in that the outcome is fixed. And if you say things are faked, pro wrestlers will actually fight you in the parking lot, so never say that. But it is fixed. There are specific storyline beats that you are intending to tell through the sport of wrestling, which is also basically a performance art, though depending on which wrestler you ask, they will take you to the parking lot and try to fight you over this, because apparently it's not cool to be a theater kid if you were once a jock in high school or whatever. But it is very much real. It is incredibly athletic. You can't just fake it till you make it. You really have to be careful because you can injure people. And while there are winners and losers and there are championship titles and stuff like that, those things are not decided purely based on someone's athletic ability, but also how important they are within the storyline, whether or not the people who are managing the promotion like them, how long and how much work they've been putting in, and things like how over they are with the fans. Do they come out and immediately get booed because the fans hate them so much? If the fans love to cheer for them, maybe seeing that person lose will cause a certain emotion. Pro wrestling is often compared to telenovelas or like daytime soap operas, and it can be very that. At its core, it's just here are two personalities. They both have the same goal, which is to win. How does that work? When they get in the ring together, how would they try to beat each other? Are they going to use their wits? Are they going to use their strength? Are they going to use their speed? Are they going to try to cheat? And once you've figured that out, you start to put a match together. Depending on who's teaching you and how much the promoters have specific ideas for you, pro wrestling matches are usually a mixture of specific move sets and beats that you want to hit. Like if you go outside the ring, that's usually planned, or if there's a specific sequence that you want to tell a story with, that's planned. But a lot of it is just improvised as well. There are certain nonverbal cues and some ear whispering and communication through the referee that happens. As a non-athletic person who has tried to play sports so often, it is so different from sports because you know going in if you're supposed to win or lose. And then the expectation is just that you deliver and make your opponent look good and look good yourself as much as possible. Well, I hope that answered the question. It's really hard to explain pro wrestling because I don't feel like I've done a particularly good job explaining it off the cuff. I would very much encourage everyone who has access to a local comic book store or a library card to look for the comic book history of pro wrestling. This comic book reads a little bit like a Wikipedia article. It's very factual. It gives you a chronological history of wrestling up until about 2017, 2018, I think. Right before AEW became a thing, which is so funny because All Elite Wrestling is like my favorite promotion right now, and there is no mention of them in the book, but the book has tons and tons of references to all the people that ended up there. I've actually been lending my copy to people who are interested in learning about pro wrestling and just kind of want an overview of what in the heck it's about, what its origin story was, how that's evolved, and who's wrestling now and where. So definitely do check that out if that sounds of interest to you. Plus, the art is just so good. The more you learn about wrestling and the more matches you watch, and especially classic matches, the more you'll be like, oh my god, this specific frame in this comic book is a reference to this specific moment in this match. It's a comic book nerdy wrestling dream, okay? If you like comics and you want to like wrestling, that's how you get into it. My favorite type of match, both to wrestle and to watch, is definitely a comedy match. I didn't realize how much potential comedy matches could have until I watched my favorite match of all time, which was Toru Yano versus Kenny Omega in the G1 Climax for New Japan Pro Wrestling. And they did the sequence of moves called the International with their legs taped together. It was the perfect storm of technical wrestling and tradition and comedy, and the two of them are just masterful. And I don't think that there's a lot of comedy wrestling that's like made it really big, but all over the indies and now starting to come up more and more because of AEW and New Japan prioritizing it, we are starting to see a rise in comedy wrestling. There are comedy wrestling promotions, but now more than ever, there are comedy wrestlers that are getting over and getting pushes in the wrestling world. Toru Yano, who I just mentioned, is one of them. He has a trophy title at the moment, and he gets to enter to the announcer, basically shilling for a whole bunch of stuff that he's associated with, and it's hilarious. Orange Cassidy, who was super big on the indies and is now one of AEW's biggest stars, who is the king of sloth style and often wrestles with his hands in his pockets and his sunglasses still on, and he's super hot, so if you're into men, whew. Also out of Japan, but on the women's wrestling side, there is Maki Ito, and if there is one Lolita friendly gimmick that I think everyone should check out, it is Maki Ito. She is a failed idol with a foul mouth, and she is the cutest alive. She is also really hilarious though, because she is a tiny woman with pigtails and an idol uniform who headbutts people, flips them off, and tells them to go F themselves. So there's definitely a market for that, and I've just never seen anyone who looks like me do it, so I'm gonna be the first. Comedy wrestling is so fun to do also because I am a very expressive person. I like making stupid faces. I don't take myself super seriously, and I just don't think that it's gonna be as easy for me to be a believable athlete. I may never be the wrestler who can like walk into the room and flex and everybody goes, oh man, she's definitely gonna win. So I'd rather not win a lot, but make everybody laugh and remember me, because the comedy matches are usually my favorite on the card. They're usually the one that when I'm driving home, that's the one I want to talk about on the way home. When people ask me who my pro wrestling inspiration is, I feel a little bit uncomfortable answering this sometimes, because the honest truth is not a popular answer amongst wrestlers or wrestling fans, and that is Nia Jax from WWE. She is a plus size woman, and she started off as a model related to a bunch of other very successful wrestlers, and so WWE hired her and trained her, and she's not got the best reputation in the business because she's been known to hurt some people who have been very, very beloved by the fans, and she gets into a lot of backstage drama, which I'm not qualified at all to comment on, but I can't tell you what it did for me to see her wrestle as a 6'2", 200 some odd pound giant woman of color. Like, for me to see her with her hair and her makeup done in the sparkly costume. Further, to see her when I was getting into it in a grudge battle with Alexa Bliss, who is this manic pixie dream girl, like Harley Quinn, Avril Lavigne type. Tiny, petite, very catty, very mean girl. And for that to be a bullying storyline where Bliss was bullying Jax because of her weight and her height, like that really got me. And seeing the outcome of that storyline made me think, yeah, I could really do this. And not only could I do this, but if she can do it and inspire somebody like me to get in the ring, then I can get in the ring and do it better and inspire somebody else like me to get in the ring. So yes, the person who originally inspired me to get into wrestling is Nia Jax. Depending on who is asking this question, sometimes I'll just lie through my teeth and say Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, or Kenny Omega, or Charlotte Flair. Some recent inspirations, though, have been Nyla Rose on AEW, Maki Ito, who I know I already talked about, Io Shirai, especially when she was in Stardom, and Britt Baker, whose heel work is just beautiful. I could watch that woman promo all day. As far as what pro wrestling training looks like, I can only really speak to how it works at the schools that I've trained at. So here's a rundown of how a typical day will go. First, you start with warm-ups. I've never had a warm-up that didn't involve at least 50 squats. There's also usually push-ups, bear crawls, jumping jacks. It really depends on the trainer, but you always do some warm-ups outside of the ring, because if you start by warming up with in-ring stuff, you're gonna pull a muscle for sure. Then you get in the ring and you usually go through your rolls and your bumps. Rolls are what they sound like. It's stuff that you would learn in a very rudimentary gymnastics class. Rolling forward, rolling on each of your arms, rolling backward, diving into a roll. Bumps are how you hit the ring, or sometimes the turnbuckle or the ring apron or whatever, how you do that safely. And bumps are super duper important. If you do those wrong, you can get really, really injured. So we go over all of those right off the bat. If you're still learning, maybe you'll skip a couple, but we usually do a snap bump, a heel bump where you do kind of a forward flip in the air, like rolling in the air to land on your back, a forward roll into a bump, back roll into a bump, a face bump, a pivot bump where you're standing up and you pretend to get hit in the face and then you have to fall sideways. And then depending on how far along in your training you are, you might also do corner bumps, which is like smashing your face into the turnbuckle, or getting sent into the corner with your back. How to do all of those things. And the best schools and the best trainers have also made me aware of how I'm supposed to be holding my body to pretend that I'm really, really hurt when I'm doing those. The further along you get, the more they expect from you. And that's all part of the warm-up. Then usually, once you've got that out of the way, there's the actual move instruction. Move instruction for beginners looks really different to move instruction for more advanced people. Basically, for beginners, you learn things like chain wrestling, which is the stuff that you see at the start of the match, where you're reversing one hold into another hold. You're working each other's arms. Sometimes you send each other to the mat and you pull each other back up. You work on things like whipping somebody into the corner, how to get somebody off the ropes, how to hit the ropes and then hit a move. And then you start to work on things like arm drags, hip tosses, scoop slams, suplexes, the bread and butter of every single wrestler's move repertoire. The further into those you get, the more interesting your matches become. And then once you've got all of that down, you go through sequences of moves. How to duck and then turn around and then take a bump and then you get back up and then you shoulder tackle somebody. I got to about that point in my training before the pandemic hit, but I also know from talking to my friends who are at much higher levels than me that when the time comes and you have an idea of what kind of move you want to learn and make one of your moves, like your signature moves that nobody else gets to do but you, then you work with your trainer to develop develop those, you practice those, and then you do practice matches where you and somebody in your class will get paired up. You will be told who is supposed to be over, who wins, how long it's supposed to be, and then you and your classmate go to a corner and you talk about what kind of story you want to tell and if there are any specific moves or moments that you want to have worked in, and then you get in the ring and you try to do a practice match. You just pretend that there's an audience and you really give it a dry run, and I have done 2 of those and they were short. They were very short. I lost both of them, by the way. Of course I did. So yeah, depending on where you are in your training, it definitely runs the gamut, but I hope that this has given you a sense of what the arc of training will look like the further in you go, and I'm sure that there are levels of training that I just have not hit yet or been exposed to really. So looking forward to finding out what those are eventually. Okay, back to present me to film an outro because, again, I did not plan this very well. Anyway, if you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. My wrestling content is not very popular compared to my Lolita content, but I'm excited to be making it anyway, and I really do appreciate all the engagement you give me. As always, please feel free to leave me comments if you've got follow-up questions or if there's a question that I still haven't answered, and I will type out a response for you or say stay tuned. If you want to follow more about my pro wrestling journey and or listen to me talk about plus-size Lolita stuff, please do subscribe. I've been able to keep up my once-a-week cadence for videos so far, so far so good. God, what else am I supposed to say in an outro? It's so weird to film this completely independent of actual video content. I feel like I'm not on. Yes, I have been Elvira. Thank you so much for watching.
And stay tuned for next week because I got this package from Mary Smile and their new Kickstarter Sakura collection. Just in time for the end of spring. I will open it and I will wear it and I'm very excited.
Okay, see you in the next video. Bye! Back roll time.